Imagine stepping off a train after days trapped inside a crowded cattle car. You haven't eaten properly in days. Children are crying. The elderly people can barely stand. The doors finally open and soldiers shout orders. Within minutes, families are separated. A quick glance from a uniformed officer determines your fate. Some are sent to the left while the others are sent to the right. Those sent to the right are told they are going to take a shower. Instead, they are pushed into sealed rooms. The doors slam shut. Poison gas pours in from the ceiling. Within minutes, everyone inside is dead. Outside, another train is already arriving. This process repeated thousands of times. It happened in places like Auschwitz, Treblinka and Sobibor during World War II, where millions of innocent people were murdered in one of the darkest crimes in human history. But here is a terrifying question. How did the world get to this point? How did an entire modern nation build factories designed for human extermination? And perhaps even more disturbing, how did millions of people go along with it? Before we go deeper into the story, take a moment to support this channel. If you believe stories like this should never be forgotten, please subscribe, follow the channel on whatever platform you're watching from. It could be YouTube, Facebook or anywhere else you may have been seeing my video. And I would like to hear your thoughts, of course. Please feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Long before the gas chambers, long before the war, back to a young man with a dream. Because before Adolf Hitler became the architect of genocide, he wanted to be something completely different. He wanted to be an artist. In the early 1900s, Hitler moved to Vienna with hopes of studying at the prestigious Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. He carried a portfolio of drawings and believed he had the talent to become a painter. But the academy rejected him. Twice, the instructors told him his work lacked artistic ability. For Hitler, the rejection was devastating. His dream collapsed almost overnight. Without admission to the academy, his life began to spiral. He struggled to survive, sleeping in homeless shelters and selling small painted postcards on the streets just to afford food. During these difficult years, something began to change inside him. The Vienna he lived in was a city filled with political tension and extreme ideas. It was a melting pot of cultures and ethnic groups: Germans, Jews, Hungarians, Slavs, and many others. In this environment, nationalist and racist ideas were spreading rapidly. Newspapers and political pamphlets blamed society's problems on minority groups, especially Jews. Conspiracy theories about Jewish control of banks, businesses, and politics circulated widely. For a frustrated young man searching for someone to blame for his failures, these ideas were dangerously appealing. Instead of blaming circumstances or accepting personal failure, Hitler began absorbing the toxic ideology around him. Gradually, resentment turned into hatred. But the moment that truly transformed him came years later. In 1914, Europe plunged into World War I. Hitler volunteered to serve in the German army and spent much of the war as a messenger on the Western Front, a dangerous role that required running through active battlefields to deliver messages between units. He was wounded during the war and received military decorations for bravery. For Hitler, the war gave him something he had never truly had before: purpose and belonging. But when Germany surrendered in 1918, he was devastated. To him, it felt impossible. German soldiers had fought fiercely for years. Many believed the army had not truly been defeated on the battlefield. Instead, a dangerous myth began to spread. It claimed Germany had been betrayed from within by political enemies, especially Jews and communists. This conspiracy theory became known as the stab in the back myth. Germany was humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. The country lost territory, faced huge economic penalties, and saw its military drastically reduced. The economy collapsed, inflation skyrocketed. At one point, German banknotes became so worthless that people used them as firewood to heat their homes. Millions of citizens were desperate for someone who promised change, and Adolf Hitler saw an opportunity. In 1919, he joined a small political group called the German Workers' Party. The party was insignificant at first, but Hitler quickly stood out. He had a powerful speaking ability. At rallies, his speeches were emotional, dramatic, and filled with anger. He blamed Germany's problems on the Treaty of Versailles, on political leaders, and especially on Jews. Crowds began listening. Within a few years, Hitler took control of the party and renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, better known today as the Nazi Party. In 1925, he published a book called Mein Kampf. The book outlined his beliefs. Germany needed authoritarian leadership, expansion of territory, and the removal of Jews from society. At first, many people ignored him, but then the Great Depression struck in 1929. The global economic crisis hit Germany particularly very hard. Millions lost their jobs. Businesses collapsed. Entire families struggled just to survive. In times of desperation, people often search for simple explanations, and Hitler offered one. He promised to restore German pride. He promised jobs. He promised stability. But the solution came with a condition. Germany needed a common enemy. By 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Once in power, he moved quickly to dismantle democracy. Political opponents were arrested. Independent newspapers were silenced. Other political parties were banned. Soon, Hitler declared himself the absolute leader, known as the Führer. What had once been hateful speeches was now becoming government policy. The persecution of Jews began gradually. At first, laws restricted their rights. Jewish citizens were banned from certain professions and government jobs. Businesses owned by Jews were boycotted. Then, the restrictions intensified. Jews were forbidden from marrying non-Jewish Germans. They were excluded from schools, parks, and public life. Propaganda portrayed them as dangerous enemies of the German people. The goal was clear: isolate them from the society. By the late 1930s, violence escalated. Jewish homes and businesses were destroyed during coordinated attacks. Thousands were arrested and sent to concentration camps. But the worst was yet to come. In 1939, World War II began when Germany invaded Poland. This invasion placed millions of Jews under Nazi control. Initially, many were forced into overcrowded ghettos, walled-off sections of cities where people were trapped in horrific conditions with little food or medicine. But Nazi leaders soon began discussing something far more extreme, a plan they called the final solution. This was the plan for systematic genocide. Beginning in 1942, extermination camps were constructed in occupied Poland. These camps, including Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, Chelmno, and Majdanek, were not ordinary prisons. They were designed for mass murder. Victims arrived by train. Most were killed within hours of arrival. Gas chambers were used to murder large groups quickly. Their bodies were then burned in crematoria. The system was organized with chilling efficiency. By the end of the war in 1945, approximately 6 million Jews had been murdered, along with millions of other victims, including Roma people, disabled individuals, political prisoners, and others targeted by the Nazi regime. When Allied soldiers liberated the concentration camps, what they discovered shocked the world. Survivors were skeletal from starvation. Thousands of bodies lay unburied. The scale of the crime was almost impossible to comprehend. After the war, many leading Nazis were tried during the Nuremberg trials, where the crimes of the regime were documented before the world. But for survivors, the trauma never truly ended. Entire communities had vanished, families had been wiped out, cultural traditions that had existed for centuries were suddenly gone. The Holocaust became one of the most studied and remembered events in human history, not just because of its scale, but because of what it revealed about humanity. It showed how dangerous hatred can become when it is normalized. It showed how propaganda can transform prejudice into policy. And perhaps most importantly, it showed how ordinary systems, government, transportation, science can be turned into instruments of destruction when ethics disappear. Today, memorials, museums, and survival testimonies exist around the world to preserve the memory of what happened, because forgetting would be dangerous. History has shown that hatred does not simply disappear. It changes form. It waits for moments of crisis, and it looks for new targets. That is why remembering Holocaust is not just about the past. It is about recognizing warning signs in the present. Because the greatest lesson of this dark chapter is simple. Genocide does not begin with gas chambers. It begins with words. It begins with blaming. It begins when people decide that some lives matter less than others. And that is why the world must never forget. Never again.